If you took an old vintage calculator shell and put in parts from the MPC-1000, you would have the new Teenage Engineering KO2 sampler composer. Let's take a closer look at it and I'll show you how it works. So the Q link on the MPC-1000 is the fader on this, and the group buttons, group A, B, C, D, are from the MPC-1000. And of course the pads and then the volume controls in the upper right are same position as the encoders on the KO2. The record and play transport in the lower right is like the record button in the lower right of the MPC. The plus and minus is like the two arrow buttons on the MPC-1000. And this idea of main being your home page is from the MPC. And this kind of obscure idea today of timing correction, the TC, is from the MPC. Like with most things, I'll try and tell you quickly and logically how this thing works. Step one would be to pick one of the 9 projects. If you hold down main, you can tell which project you're in because it'll be flashing. You can change a project by long holding main plus a pad number. And so when you hit play, you're playing these 4 patterns. So if I hold these down, I see the 4 patterns that will play simultaneously, A1, B1, C1, and D1. You record them one at a time, and so you could do drums, bass, melody, pad, for example. And you can change the length of the patterns independently, so I could make this 2 measures and this 4 measures. But I personally like to work in 4 measure blocks. So the way you change the pattern length is by holding down record and using the plus minus. Next, I'll talk about putting sounds on the pads. You just hit sound and then you hit the pad that you want to put the sound on and use the plus and minus to select your sound. Now we're in the 700s here, and so if you want to get quickly to another area, you hold down sound and you see a little blue icon there indicating that you can type in what you want. You can edit these sounds by shift sound. So starting with the sound mode, you have one shot, key, and legato modes. And then you can go to trim, and you have the start and end point of your sample. You have envelope with the attack and release. You have the time stretch if you're doing time stretching a sample. You have assigning MIDI channel to a certain pad, and you have group where you can decide I've got certain samples that I never want to play over one another, and those are the ones that are lit. Now these pads can be velocity sensitive. By hitting shift plus erase, you can get to some of these menus and then use plus or minus to go to pad, then use enter to go into that. You can play the sounds chromatically, and if I select keys, there's a little keys icon that comes up. And now I can play that chromatically. You can change the octave of the keys by holding keys and hitting plus minus. You can transpose the keys by hitting keys and selecting one of the number pads. You can change the scale that the keys play by shift erase and select pad, enter, scale, enter. Currently in the 12-tone scale. Each track has a bunch of functions controlled by the fader that change the whole track. And if you hold down fader, you can decide which one of these functions the fader will control. Level pitch time, low pass filter, high pass filter, FX volume, attack, release, pan, tune, velocity, and mod. Now this mod thing is like a vibrato. It's like an LFO to pitch. Well, the speed of the LFO is not adjustable. Release is flashing, and so my fader's controlling the release. and it's applying to all the drums on track A. And that works well for drum and bass to get those crisp drum sounds. I'll show you what I mean. So without it, you'll hear how sloppy the drums are, and then I'm going to tighten them down. And so you hit record, play, and punch in your beat. And you could put it in using different kinds of timing. You can use quantized timing and free timing. And you can select the division of the sequencer. So if you wanted to do tight little ratchets and things, you could put it on 32. And you could go step by step. So you'd have 32 steps before this 1 turns to a 2 to put in tight little trills and stuff. 32 steps there. Whereas if it was set on 16, then you would only have 16 steps available. And if it was on 8, there would only be 8 steps available to step through. So I'll show you. Put it on. Now it'll only take 8 steps to get to the next measure. So it'll only give you 8 opportunities to do it. This transport is like a fast forward rewind thing like that. But you can jump to measures by holding down shift and using minus and plus. For hi-hat entry, there's an MPC note repeat type of thing. If you hold down timing and one of the pads. Now, after you finish the first 4 measures of your song on track A, B, C, and D, you want to move on to the next section of your song. So your song will be divided into these sections. And holding down main, I see on the display that I am in section 01. So I'll have to create section 2. So there's this thing called shift commit, which is like cloning. So if I hit shift commit, it will clone these 4 patterns, but give me new numbers for them so that I can change these new patterns in section 2 without affecting the first pattern from section 1. So let's try it. I currently have pattern A1, B1, C1, D1. I hit shift commit, and now I'm in section 2. I hold down main, I can see section 02. And I'll bet you I've got pattern A2, B2, C2, D2. Let's see. A2, B2, C2, D2. It's a clone of my other patterns, but now I can change these patterns without affecting the patterns in section 1. Now these are the main effects. So there's one send effect, overall send effect that you can use. And in this case, I've got it turned on reverb. A delay. Distortion, chorus, a filter, compressor. So there's various performance effects. If I hold down FX, now I can hit these numbers and get performance effects. Then it has the looper effect, the whole shift tempo. It's kind of a looper repeat thing with some adjustability to it. So let's sample something and spread it across the pads. So I've got this Boards of Canada style sample. The first thing I'm going to do is get into the right tempo by tapping tempo. So I'll play the sample. So it's 100 BPM. That's perfect. Next, I'm going to hit the sample button and play this source and adjust the orange encoder to make it as loud as I can without hitting the exclamation point. So I'm going to hit sample. And I'm going to sample from the left, the center channel. So a sum of both in there. So about halfway up is perfect. And then a quarter is enough for the threshold, so that when this thing hears sound playing, it'll start the recording. So I'm going to hold down the pad that I'm going to initially record this to, and then play it. And the threshold will hear the audio coming in and start. Now I'm going to slice it up and put it on the pads. So I'm going to hit Shift Sample, and it'll play it through once on its own. Now I'm going to rhythmically play it through on the pads. Now, while I'm in here, I can adjust these and trim them out using these two encoders if I want to. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this. I ask that you press the like button so that my video will rise in the algorithms. And join me over there on my Patreon. I'll put a link, and I'll see you in the next video.